This scene with Laney and Freya unfolds like a deceptively simple slice of domestic life. But when viewed through a queer, emotionally grounded lens, it becomes a quietly resonant exploration of intimacy, inertia, insecurity, and the ways queer women negotiate desire, ambition, and self-presentation in a world that often demands explanation. The opening exchange with Laney asking how many more years of this they have and Freya casually replying 50, 60, immediately situates their relationship in a shared future that is assumed rather than questioned. A subtle but meaningful detail for lesbian audiences who are used to seeing queer relationships framed as temporary, experimental, or precarious. Their boredom is not just situational but existential, reflecting a familiar phase of early adulthood where time feels endless yet directionless. And their banter about driving, jobs, and doing something crazy reveals two different coping mechanisms: Freya's restless urge to act, to move, to chase novelty, and Laney's deliberate resistance to productivity culture. Her insistence that wanting to do nothing is not failure but a conscious choice. For many queer women, this tension resonates deeply, as queerness often involves rejecting or renegotiating conventional milestones like careers, licenses, and ambition, especially when those milestones are tied to heteronormative expectations. Laney's lack of a driver's license in Los Angeles, Freya's teasing about it, and Laney's easy deflection all point to a dynamic where humor masks vulnerability, and where being behind by societal standards becomes a source of both defiance and quiet shame. Their conversation about jobs and money further exposes how dependence and privilege complicate queer relationships, with Freya acknowledging her father's financial support and Laney questioning the point of working at all, a dynamic that mirrors real-world tensions around autonomy, security, and self-worth. When they finally decide to go outside and count passing cars, the anticlimax of only one car driving by underscores the absurdity and tenderness of their shared boredom, turning the mundane into something intimate simply because they are experiencing it together. Back inside, the shift in tone becomes more personal as Freya presses Laney about why she didn't participate, and Laney's admission of shyness and insecurity marks a turning point from playful detachment to emotional honesty. This moment is particularly significant for queer viewers, as it reflects how confidence and coolness are often used as armor within lesbian relationships, a way to avoid being seen as needy or vulnerable in a culture that already scrutinizes queer women's emotions. Laney's discomfort standing next to Freya, her feeling silly, hints at comparison and self-consciousness, experiences many queer women recognize when navigating desire alongside admiration for a partner. Freya's response, calling out Laney's pretense of not caring and insisting that indifference does not equal lack of feeling, gently challenges the persona Laney has constructed, and in doing so affirms that emotional depth is not something to be hidden or mocked. The dialogue dances around exposure and reassurance, with jokes about being a therapist and about cool girl cred, but beneath the humor lies a serious negotiation of visibility: who gets to be seen, who feels safe being seen, and what it costs to let someone look at you without filters. Freya's kisses are framed not as spectacle but as affirmation, as a wordless way of saying that Laney's insecurity does not diminish her desirability or worth, and the scene resists voyeurism by keeping the focus on trust and mutual recognition rather than physical detail. For lesbian and broader LGBTQ+ audiences, this moment reflects a familiar push and pull between wanting to appear effortless and wanting to be fully known, a tension amplified by a society that often stereotypes queer women as either overly emotional or performatively detached. The scene also subtly challenges society's discomfort with women expressing love for each other by treating their intimacy as ordinary, almost banal, rooted in boredom, teasing, and shared space, rather than heightened drama. That discomfort persists largely because women's emotional bonds, especially when romantic threaten cultural norms that trivialize female intimacy or frame it as secondary to male-centered narratives, and by presenting Laney and Freya's connection as both affectionate and unresolved, the scene insists on its legitimacy without asking for permission. Symbolically, Laney embodies resistance to external expectations, choosing stillness and self-definition even when it looks like apathy, while Freya represents curiosity, motion, and the desire to engage with the world, and their interaction mirrors the real-world balancing act queer women often perform between self-protection and... Ultimately, the scene is not about finding purpose or solving boredom, but about recognizing that intimacy itself can be meaningful even in moments of stagnation, and it offers viewers a reflection of queer love that is gentle, flawed, and deeply human, inviting women watching to see their own doubts, defenses, and desires treated with empathy rather than judgment. Scene 2 unfolds as an intimate confrontation between ambition and ease, using the quiet space of a kitchen and then a bedroom to explore how two women carry the weight of expectation differently and how that difference becomes the doorway to unexpected connection. Jessica's hesitation before answering the phone immediately signals disappointment and self-surveillance, And when she confirms the professional rejection, her composure collapses into a raw confession of effort, perfectionism, and exhaustion that will feel achingly familiar to many women, especially queer women who are often taught that excellence is the price of acceptance. Her insistence that she meditates, works hard, and does everything right underscores how deeply she has internalized the belief that worth must be earned through discipline and productivity. And her anger is not just about a job, but about a system that keeps moving the finish line. Laney's response is quiet and grounding rather than corrective, offering empathy without advice. And this contrast establishes the emotional core of the scene, one woman striving endlessly to become enough, and another who has opted out of the race entirely. Their conversation about aspiring to nothing is deceptively playful but philosophically loaded, challenging hustle culture and the gendered expectation that women must always be improving themselves to remain desirable or valuable. For lesbian and broader LGBTQ+ audiences, this exchange resonates as a critique of both heteronormative success narratives and queer respectability politics, which often demand that queer people be exceptional just to justify their existence. When Laney invites Jessica back to bed, it is framed not as seduction, but as permission to rest, a radical act in a world that equates stillness with failure. And the bed becomes a symbolic space of safety, where nothing is required and nothing is judged. The idea that conversations there cannot be important is not avoidance, but boundary setting, emphasizing emotional consent and the need for spaces where women can exist without performing competence or ambition. As they talk, Laney's openness about her past relationship with a woman and her refusal to frame that breakup as tragic or unfinished further reinforces her grounded self-acceptance, offering Jessica a model of queerness that is calm, unapologetic, and uncompetitive. Jessica's surprise at Laney's sexuality reveals lingering stereotypes about what desire looks like, particularly the assumption that intimacy must be driven by intensity or rivalry, and her admission that her past relationships felt competitive exposes how deeply comparison and self-optimization have shaped her understanding of love. Laney's question about whether that constant pressure ever gets tiring cuts to the heart of the matter, articulating a truth many women feel but rarely voice, that being loved for potential rather than presence can be deeply alienating. The kiss that follows is understated and emotionally motivated, emerging not from conquest or fantasy but from recognition, and it gently challenges society's discomfort with women expressing love for each other by presenting it as natural, affirming, and free of spectacle. That discomfort persists because women's intimacy, especially queer intimacy, threatens systems that rely on women's labor, competition, and self-doubt, and by choosing tenderness over drama, the scene refuses to make that intimacy palatable through irony or distance. Laney's affirmation of Jessica, naming her intelligence and kindness while also acknowledging her flaws, models a form of love that does not require fixing or outperforming. And Jessica's reciprocation signals a moment of self-acceptance that feels earned rather than rushed. Together, they embody two survival strategies many queer women recognize, one built on striving and one on refusal. And their connection suggests that authenticity can emerge when those strategies meet without judgment, offering viewers a deeply human portrait of queer love as rest, recognition, and relief. This moment also speaks to broader feminist concerns, as it highlights how women are socialized to police one another and themselves, measuring success through external validation while neglecting emotional well-being, and the scene gently proposes an alternative rooted in mutual care. For many viewers, especially lesbians who have navigated workplaces and relationships where they felt they had to outperform or out-explain themselves, Jessica's breakdown and Laney's refusal to pathologize it can feel deeply affirming. The scene does not promise permanence or resolution, but it does offer visibility, suggesting that even brief moments of being seen without conditions can shift how a person understands themselves. By centering conversation, consent, and emotional honesty, the film resists voyeurism and instead honors the interior lives of its characters. In doing so, it invites women watching to imagine relationships that are not built on proving worth, but on recognizing it, and to consider that choosing rest, softness, and connection can itself be a meaningful act of resistance. It closes by affirming that queer intimacy can be quiet, restorative, and politically meaningful, simply by existing together openly.